This time of year, everyone is telling you what to make for the holidays, but equally as important is what are you going to make around the holidays? Many people will have two Thanksgiving dinners on one day or a Christmas Eve dinner, quickly followed by a big Christmas Day breakfast the next morning. Now, if you're like me, I eat everything in sight on these days, so it's important to eat a little bit lighter on either side. But I'm not going to be throwing back protein shakes and eating fistfuls of lettuce. So, in this video, I have 3 high-protein recipes. They take about 15 minutes or have modular components that can be prepped ahead of time. You can fit them in the day before, the day after a holiday, or even the day of if you have one of those weird, 3 p.m. dinners. And I'll have the macros for each, but these do not sacrifice on flavor. I feel like I could eat 10 of these things right now. But first, thank you to today's sponsor, Made In, who made all the cookware that I used in this video. For dish number 1, you'll see me using Made In's carbon steel griddle for searing the chicken. In dish number 2, I'll be using the 10-inch carbon steel frying pan for the spiced lamb. And of course, one of my all-time favorites, the carbon steel wok, will be used in recipe 3 for searing up that ginger chicken. And right now, Made In is offering some of the best deals of the years, so I would highly recommend checking out the carbon steel collection or any of their items. I've been using their stuff for the past couple of years, and I've got to say, these might make some of the best gifts you could possibly give or receive this holiday season. So thank you again, Made In, for sponsoring this video, and let's talk about chicken Tinga. First up, we have chicken Tinga, which is one of the best freezer meals in existence. You can whip up so many different things with this at a moment's notice, from tacos, sandwiches, nachos, salads. It's really up to you. So to start, get out 2 large chicken breasts and pat them dry if there is some excess moisture. Then slice into the thickest part and pull that flat back in order to create a more even cooking surface, as we've discussed in my chicken science video. Once sliced, I give them a nice sprinkle of salt on both sides, and let's cook them. So I set the griddle over ripping high heat, at least 400 degrees Fahrenheit here, and then add a drizzle of oil before adding the chicken. And the key here is to let that chicken cook without moving so it completely browns on one side. And I like to wait until you see the chicken turn white, just at that halfway portion, before going ahead and flipping it. Who said chicken breast can't get some color on it? Now all I do is wait for the chicken to come to 155 degrees internal, and you have this beautifully grilled chicken. And what's good about this is it's almost completely hands-off work, so while the chicken is cooking, we can easily prepare the Tinga sauce. To a blender, add 1 can of whole peeled tomatoes, 2 chipotles in adobo, 3 if you want a little spicier, 1/4 of a white onion, 3 garlic cloves, a sprinkle of ground cumin, and a sprinkle of oregano before blending that all up into a fine puree that is smoky, spicy, and delicious. Now that the chicken is cooked, bring it over to the cutting board and shred it up. And it's nice and juicy, but also has a little extra flavor and texture from that browned exterior. Bring the chicken and sauce over to the stove and set a pot over medium heat. Add a little squirt of oil, then toss in the sauce and let that hard simmer for about 2 minutes before adding the shredded chicken. Then just let this entire mixture simmer for at least 10 minutes, though you can go longer, up to 30 or 40 minutes if you want to get a deeper color by caramelizing that sauce a bit. Once simmered, I just let this pot cool down on the stove before transferring it over to a freezer bag, and I'll lay it on a baking sheet first so it lays flat while it freezes. And like I mentioned, you can do anything you want with this stuff, but one of my personal favorites is a chicken Tinga quesadilla. So for the quesadilla, I slap down a large corn tortilla onto the griddle to warm up, though you could use flour here if you want. Then I just add whatever cheese I have on hand. This time I had some grated pepper jack and leftover cheddar from the mac and cheese video that I let start to melt. Meanwhile, I grabbed out some of the frozen chicken Tinga and tossed that into a microwave for about 2 minutes to heat up. Then, once that cheese is mostly melted, I add the Tinga and let that bottom of the tortilla crisp up a bit before flipping it in half and letting that inside spill out. And these insides will kind of caramelize and char a little bit on the stove. Now, last but very importantly, I've started cutting my quesadillas into quesadilla fingers, if you will, because they are so much better to dip into a little sour cream and poblano hot sauce mixture. Freezer meat makes these meals so easy. Such an easy little snack, quick meal. Make one of them, 2 of them, probably 250 to 300 calories a pop, and then
I'm all in on these kind of quesadilla fingers. I'm sure someone has done this before, but I started cutting my quesadillas this way so I could dip them a little bit easier than the triangles, and absolute game changer.
These spiced lamb wraps with white sauce are a little bundle of flavor that are truly addictive. To start, set a skillet over high heat, and once hot, just squish down 1 pound of ground lamb or any ground meat you happen to be using, and then let that start to brown, and meanwhile, we'll add our seasonings here. This is 6 grams of salt, 5 grams of ground cumin, 5 cloves that have been ground up, a half a gram or a sprinkle of oregano, 1 gram of black pepper, and lastly, 3 garlic cloves that I grated up. Then I like to combine everything by using a potato masher to ground up, and this is how I like to get those little pebbly bits of lamb and evenly disperse the seasoning throughout the meat. And that's literally all you have to do here. I'm going to let this brown up in its own fat for 4 to 5 minutes so we can deepen the flavor, and it basically fries the edges in that lamb fat, and as you can see, we get that nice browning here. Then one final but very important step, after I take it off the heat, I spritz this with some fresh lemon juice, which really gives it that nice pop of brightness and acidity to pair with the seasoned lamb. Lastly, just transfer this to a container and you can store it in the fridge. Now, while that was cooking, I quickly made a white sauce with 100 grams of non-fat Greek yogurt for a little extra protein, 100 grams of mayo, a sprinkle of black pepper, sprinkle of oregano, some smoked paprika, and the juice from 1/2 of a lemon. Then you just have to mix that all up and let's assemble. Per wrap, I like using these mini lavash breads, which are just 60 calories. Then I'll go ahead and warm up some of the lamb in the microwave. To layer these, I start with some white sauce, then add the sliced lettuce, some spicy garlic pickles that I had, diced cherry tomatoes, about 30 grams of the cooked lamb, then another drizzle of white sauce over the top before wrapping these up tight. These are small, but mighty in flavor.
I feel like I could eat 10 of these things right now. This is an absolute must make. It's tangy, zesty, meaty from the lamb. Everything just works so well, all wrapped in a tight little package. I mean, you can make the beet ahead of time, you have the white sauce in the fridge, and then pair it with some fresh components. It doesn't get much easier or flavorful than this. This is just unreasonably good.
This ginger chicken is a recipe I learned about from the Land of Rice and Sea by Fuchsia Dunlop, which is a great cookbook if you want to try out some dishes from Chinese lower Yangtze region. And this recipe is really simple, it's all about the ginger. As with all stir-fry dishes, I prep everything ahead of time because the actual cooking part takes about 5 minutes. So to start, I have 2 green onion and I cut the white part from the green tops and then slice those as thin as I can. Next, I have 4 or 5 knobs of ginger, or about 60 grams worth, and I'm just scraping off the skin with a spoon and then slicing it into as thin of pieces as I can. And for this, you do want to buy the smaller organic ginger for this dish because it tends to be a little bit less fibrous than the larger bulk ginger. Next, transfer the ginger and green onions off to a container, and let's prep the chicken. I'm using chicken breasts here, but obviously boneless, skinless chicken thighs would work great as well. And just chop these into cubes and then transfer them to a bowl, and let's make the sauce and the marinade for the chicken. So for the chicken marinade, I add 4 grams of salt, 7 grams of corn or potato starch, and 10 grams of rice wine vinegar before mixing that up. And the book uses Shaoxing wine if you do have it, but I didn't happen to have it on hand. Then for the sauce, set a bowl over a scale and add 10 grams of light soy sauce, 5 grams of dark soy sauce, 5 grams of sugar, and 15 grams of water, and this sauce will thicken when we add it to the wok. So at the stove, set the wok over ripping high heat and add about a 10-gram drizzle of oil here. Once hot, toss in the ginger and the bottoms of those spring onions and saute for about 60 seconds until it's nice and fragrant and that oil has been infused. Next, toss in the marinated chicken and let it cook through. This will probably take 3 to 4 minutes depending on the size of your chicken pieces. Once the chicken is cooked through, go ahead and pour in the sauce, and because of that potato starch in the chicken marinade, this should begin to thicken as it heats up. Now, you can always make a little bit more starch slurry if you find your sauce is not the consistency you want, but just let all of this simmer for about 1 to 2 minutes. And lastly, before serving, we're going to toss in the top green parts of those spring onions and let it cook for just 30 to 60 seconds before transferring this over to a bowl. This ginger chicken is so easy, but absolutely pops with flavor.
I'm an absolute ginger sicko, so I love just the sheer amount of ginger in this dish. Would this be good over rice? Absolutely. Am I enjoying this as just a big old bowl of protein? Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you got that Thanksgiving dinner coming up, maybe you want to carb up at Thanksgiving, you know, make your bowl of ginger chicken protein and, you know, have this the day before, maybe the day after. I mean, it's such a good dish. There's so much ginger in this, you actually get that little tingle like you do garlic. But anyway, all three of these recipes will be up on our website if you want to follow them exactly. Hopefully you guys have a good November, December with the holidays coming up. Try out some of these recipes today. They're just so easy to fit in. Wherever you need to fit them in, you can fit them in. They're gonna be delicious, and you know, they'll be there for you. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed. I will catch you all in the next one. Peace, y'all.